Hey guys, we are back again with another video for hyperpigmentation. Now this one is hyperpigmentation treatments for dark skin and treating things naturally. And we go over some of the common ingredients that we discussed in our last video of treating hyperpigmentation naturally, but we've included some other ingredients that where the clinical studies were actually done on Fitzpatrick skin types 4 through 6. So if you have melasma, you have post-inflammatory hyperpigmentation, you have just some age spots that you want to treat more naturally, stay tuned. So if this is the first video that you are watching in our whole series of hyperpigmentation, I do want to mention that go ahead and check out that playlist, but this specifically is dealing with Fitzpatrick skin types 4 through 6 because those skin types tend to create melanin a whole lot easier. And so when you can create melanin a whole lot easier, the flip side to that is you could actually make hyperpigmentation, so more melanin that you want, especially on the face. So we're going to be talking about that today. And what is a challenge in my experience with treating Fitzpatrick 4 through 6 is that creating a protocol that is specific not only to that skin type and that individual, but trying to treat the hyperpigmentation without increasing or at least minimizing inflammation, because inflammation can bring about more hyperpigmentation. So these are the challenges that I have encountered with treating Fitzpatrick 4 through 6. For those of you who this is the first time you're watching this video, my name is Christy and I've been treating clients with hyperpigmentation, acne, and other skin conditions for over 11 years. And so these are based upon my experiences. So here are the 3 challenges. So the first one is darker, especially people who have darker skin types, they tend to shy away or not be too excited about using sunscreen. One is because most sunscreens make them look ashy. So that's one. 2 is a lot of them don't want to use that because they say, oh, I never burn, so I don't need to use sunscreen. So yes, that may be true that you have this skin type where you rarely burn, but if you're already making too much pigments leading to hyperpigmentation and the sun increases or stimulates those melanocytes to make more melanin, that you do need to use sunscreen. So I'll be talking about more pro tips later on in the video on how to help with that. Challenge number 2 is that by the time a client comes and sees me to treat the hyperpigmentation, a lot of times they've tried all these home remedies and tried over-the-counter products and nothing seems to be working, and in some cases they've noticed that the hyperpigmentation has gotten darker and or larger. So by the time they come to me, they want things done very quickly and very fast. And I try to explain to my clients that hyperpigmentation, as you all know, is not developed overnight. You did not get pregnancy mask, you did not get these large patches of melasma overnight. It's usually done over the course of months and even years. So by the time they come see me, they want results very quickly. But the thing I try to explain to them is that if it came slowly, we want to deal with it slowly, because if we go the more aggressive route, especially with people who tend to have very sensitive skin or lots of pigmentation, then we can increase inflammation and therefore it comes back quicker and more aggressively. So they don't want to hear that, and so they go somewhere else. And then they find out, I've had some people come back to me because it actually got worse. So that's another challenge with darker skin types. The other one is 3 is that if you go too aggressively with this skin type, what can happen is you produce way more hyperpigmentation faster because of the inflammation, or hypopigmentation, where the melanocyte has died off and now you have no pigments, and that condition is actually irreversible. So here are some natural ingredients. So the first one is soy, arbutin, niacinamide, and N-acetylglucosamine. The other ones are licorice extract. Oh, I already forgot. I need lunch. The next ones are licorice extract, lignin peroxidase, amblica extract, vitamin C, kojic acid, and glutathione. Okay, so I'm not going to focus on the ingredients that we talked about in our other video, so if you haven't watched that, you can go ahead and catch that later. But the one I'm going to focus on is N-acetylglucosamine. We're going to call that NAG, N-A-G. And that is actually a derivative of glucosamine. The NAG is more stable than glucosamine, which is why you'll see that used more in skincare products. It is known as a tyrosinase inhibitor. So you see NAG in skincare products because it's good. It has a good ability for skin penetration. So in an 8-week clinical study, NAG showed to have 2% increase in improvement in hyperpigmentation. However, in a second clinical study, it showed that when combined with 2% NAG and 4% niacinamide, it was not only well tolerated by most skin types, it actually showed a better increase or a better result in the appearance of hyperpigmentation. And I'm starting to find with the study of the niacinamide, it seems to boost the efficacy of other lighteners and brighteners, not only with, in my other video when I talked about the 6 anti-aging tips of niacinamide, niacinamide also increases the efficacy of vitamin A, C, and E. So it seems to like be the BFF of all these other ingredients, and it's well tolerated by most skin types. Brain fart. I literally had a sandwich. Wait, did you see my face on that? I was literally like, huh? Sorry, I literally had a pastrami sandwich that came into my head. I haven't eaten pastrami sandwiches in ages. Jeez, that's so weird. So the next one is amblica extract. It is an antioxidant. It is also known as a tyrosinase inhibitor, as well as a collagenase inhibitor. I don't know if it's collagenase or collagenase. It is an enzyme that it holds the peptide binds in collagen. The next one is glutathione. It is a low molecular weight thiol tripeptide that has a major role in intercellular redox balance. It also has antioxidant properties, but in addition to that, it has an indirect action of suppressing tyrosinase and changing the eumelanin, which is the black and brown pigments, to pheomelanin, which is the yellowish red pigment. So this ingredient can be taken orally, and it can be applied topically and parenterally, which basically means that you can apply it in any other part of the body, such as intravenously. That doesn't include the mouth or on the other side, anally. So what I get a lot of questions when people talk about it being injected in there. There needs to be more clinical studies, and there's actually been some serious side effects for people who've been doing this. Now, according to one article, even though glutathione injections are very popular for skin lightening effects, there is no clinical evidence for its efficacy when administered that way. It's been such a concern that the Food and Drug Administration of the Philippines issued a public warning condemning its use for off-label indications such as skin lightening. Currently, if this ingredient is taken orally, orally? Currently, if this ingredient is taken orally or applied topically, there has been some results that show some skin lightening benefits. However, more testing needs to be done to prove its long-term efficacy effects. So some of you have let me know in the comments that you've been doing the injections. Some of you guys were in the Philippines. Others of you were in, I think, India. I'm not really sure. Saying that they're not working. What do I think of this? And we don't do that here. And all the clinical studies, again, there's not a lot of them. They don't really show that much results on that. So if you still want to use that and you want to take them orally or topically, you may want to try that. I don't know if in your country you have access to those other ingredients that I'm talking about. So before we go into our pro tips, if you're finding this information helpful, we would love it if you subscribe and hit that notification bell to know when our videos come up. So here comes the pro tips. So like in the video, these pro tips are specific to you if you have darker skin, or if you actually know your Fitzpatrick skin category. It's 4 through 6. So the first one is, I mentioned before, people who have dark skin, at least the clients that I've worked with, they tend to shy away from sunscreen even though they need it. Especially if you have hyperpigmentation. So here is a tip. I know a lot of the sunscreens make your skin type look ashy. So one of the recommendations that I do have is Image Eye Conceal Foundation. It has an SPF of 30, and they don't use chemical sunscreens, which can tend to inflame or increase hyperpigmentation for some people, especially if they're doing hyperpigmentation treatments or using products that can, like AHAs, and they can increase hyperpigmentation in some skin types. So and this one is mocha. So the unique thing about Image Eye Conceal, and they are not paying me to say this, is because I've worked with this, is instead of having all these different colors, they actually work with the 6 different Fitzpatrick skin categories. So this is the darkest one, and this one is mocha. They also have toffee, which is probably Fitzpatrick 5, and suede. I think that's Fitzpatrick 3 or 4, maybe 4. So these tend to work better with the darker skin types, and it does have the SPF 30. So if you don't want to use sunscreen because it makes you look ashy, these tend to work better for them. And it has some antioxidants and anti-aging properties. So that's one, and I'll put the links in below so you can actually try it. Pro tip number 2. So the other one is, if you're on YouTube, if you're on the website, they talk about retin-A or retinol or AHA, any type of AHA, to help with exfoliating, because exfoliation helps with even skin tone and increasing the efficacy of lightening products that you may be using, whether it's a lightening serum or a lotion, and those are all true. But for some people, when they get an increase of inflammation, their hyperpigmentation actually can get darker, and then a lot of them are not, when they're using this, they avoid the sunscreen, even though they're told, or even on the product it says to use a sunscreen with it, they're avoiding the sunscreen. So if you want to avoid using a leave-on exfoliant, which can, especially when you're using other products, can increase chances of dermatitis or more inflammation, use products that have lightening agents in there where you can exfoliate and then take it off. And I will link below on some of the products that I used with my darker toned clients. The next tip is consistency. I have found on feedback from YouTube and actually some of my clients where they will hear or read about some other ingredient that works. So they'll be on a consistent thing and then they'll jump to another one, and then they end up sensitizing their skin or saying that none of them works because they're jumping around so much. So it is consistent, especially if you are involving a professional treatment along with home care, is to be consistent in usage and consistent in the way that that person has prescribed usage, step by step. If you start getting all creative and saying, I'm going to use this with this now, it may not work. Okay, so you have to be consistent in your usage according to how the instructions were administered to you. So that's one. The next one is, you have to remember that hyperpigmentation did not form overnight. So if you're not seeing the results right away, you have to remember that most products, especially if you're going the natural way, it takes a minimum of 30 days for you to see any changes at all. So you have to be patient with that, because if you go too quickly, you can have the opposite problem where you're having inflammation and an increase in hyperpigmentation, and in some cases hypopigmentation. And then the other tip is, if you can, work up to using more aggressive ingredients, not jumping to that right away, especially if you are more prone to sensitivity. So what I mean by that is work with more of the natural tyrosinase inhibitors, and then once your skin gets acclimated to that, then preferably with someone who is professional, they can show you how to introduce more assertive ingredients such as retin-A or retinol or L-ascorbic acid, and how it can involve with the other ingredients or products that you are using, because you may not be able to use that right away. And as your skin gets acclimated to a specific pH, maybe you can go down a little bit lower. And if any of these things are increasing inflammation, or you're getting a rash, some type of dermatitis, then decrease the frequency or how you use those products. So if the professional tells you to use it a certain way and your skin is getting inflamed, maybe they're telling you to use it 3 times or every single night, maybe you can bring it down a notch. And then include in them some ingredients that are natural anti-inflammatories to help balance out the increase of inflammation that some of these ingredients might have on your skin. Remember, makeup is an art and skincare is a science.